We now shift our focus from joining parties to joining claims between existing parties, governed primarily by Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 13. While the preceding rules dealt with bringing new parties into the lawsuit, Rule 13 addresses claims asserted by a party already defending against an opponent. Specifically, it governs counterclaims and cross-claims. Understanding Rule 13 is crucial because it dictates when a party must bring a claim now, or risk losing it forever. This chapter sets the stage for our deep dive into the two most significant aspects of this rule. We will first examine the mandatory nature of compulsory counterclaims found in Rule 13a. Following that, we will explore the nature and requirements of cross-claims, detailed in Rule 13g. These two provisions define the boundaries of required versus optional litigation between opposing and co-parties in federal court. Having established the landscape of Rule 13, we must first clarify the optional claim, the permissive counterclaim, governed by Rule 13b. A permissive counterclaim is any claim a defendant has against a plaintiff that does not arise out of the transaction or occurrence that is the subject matter of the original lawsuit. Think of it as an entirely separate lawsuit shoehorned into the existing case file. Because these claims are unrelated to the core dispute, they must independently satisfy all jurisdictional requirements, including subject matter jurisdiction. This stands in stark contrast to the rule we are about to explore. Rule 13b allows you to bring unrelated claims if you want to, but it does not force you to. This optionality is precisely why Rule 13a, the compulsory counterclaim, demands our immediate attention. Rule 13a acts as a litigation gatekeeper, forcing parties to litigate all claims logically related to the original action right now, or face permanent waiver. Now that we understand the optional nature of permissive claims, let us turn our full attention to Rule 13a, the compulsory counterclaim. This rule is mandatory, meaning if the conditions are met, you must assert the claim now, or lose it forever. For a counterclaim to be deemed compulsory under Rule 13a, three specific requirements must all be satisfied simultaneously. First, the claim must be asserted against an opposing party. In the typical lawsuit structure, this means the defendant asserting the claim against the plaintiff, or vice versa if the plaintiff files a reply containing a counterclaim. Second, the claim must have existed at the time the defendant serves their answer. If the claim arises after the answer is filed, it generally cannot be compulsory under this rule. Third, and perhaps most famously, the counterclaim must arise out of the same transaction or occurrence as the opposing party's existing claim. We will dedicate the next segment to thoroughly analyzing this transactional nexus, but for now, remember these three essential elements: opposing party, existing at answer, and same transaction or occurrence. Meeting all three triggers the mandatory assertion requirement. We now focus intensely on that third, crucial element for compulsion. The claim must arise out of the same transaction or occurrence as the opposing party's existing claim. This is often referred to as the transactional nexus. Courts interpret this phrase broadly, seeking a significant logical relationship between the claims. This relationship is established if the claims involve substantially overlapping facts, or if the same evidence would be necessary to prove or disprove both the original claim and the counterclaim. Think of it as requiring a common nucleus of operative facts. Consider a concrete example. Suppose plaintiff sues defendant for personal injuries arising from a car accident. Defendant, who suffered property damage in that exact same collision, must assert a counterclaim for the cost of repairing their vehicle. Both the plaintiff's negligence claim and the defendant's property damage counterclaim stem directly from that single originating event, the car accident. Because they share the same transaction, the defendant's property claim is compulsory under Rule 13a. If the defendant fails to bring that property claim now, they waive it forever. That final statement is the core lesson here. When a counterclaim is compulsory under Rule 13a, and the defendant neglects to raise it in their answer, that claim is extinguished. It is waived permanently. This is not merely a procedural penalty. It invokes the powerful doctrine of claim preclusion, often known by its Latin name, res judicata. Res judicata bars the defendant from ever bringing that claim again, even in a completely new, separate lawsuit. The federal rules are designed to promote judicial efficiency by ensuring that all claims arising from the same transaction are litigated in one proceeding. Failing to meet this mandatory requirement is one of the most common and costly mistakes made by new litigators. They might think they can save the property damage claim for later, but the door slams shut immediately upon the conclusion of the first action. This preclusive effect is absolute. Remember this severe consequence: compulsory means mandatory, and mandatory means waiver upon omission, leading directly to claim preclusion. Having fully explored the mandatory nature and severe consequences of compulsory counterclaims under Rule 13a, we now pivot to a different relationship governed by Rule 13, the cross-claim, found in Rule 13g. A cross-claim is fundamentally different because it is asserted by one party against a co-party. Think of Defendant 1 asserting a claim directly against Defendant 2. This is not a claim against an opponent, but against someone on the same side of the verses in the case caption. The most critical distinction to internalize is this: cross-claims under Rule 13g are never compulsory. You are never required to bring a cross-claim. However, if you choose to bring one, there is a significant limitation on its scope. Rule 13g mandates that the cross-claim must arise out of the same transaction or occurrence that is the subject matter of the original action, or it must relate to any counterclaim already asserted. This transactional nexus requirement ensures that while the claim is optional, it must still be logically connected to the existing litigation, preventing the introduction of entirely unrelated matters between co-parties. We have established that cross-claims are optional but transactionally linked. Now, let us compare the jurisdictional treatment of these optional cross-claims against the mandatory nature of compulsory counterclaims. The jurisdictional rules differ significantly. Compulsory counterclaims under Rule 13a are powerful magnets for supplemental jurisdiction. If the main claim provides the anchor jurisdiction, the compulsory counterclaim automatically falls under the court's supplemental authority, even if diversity is lacking between the original plaintiff and the counterclaim defendant. Cross-claims, although transactionally related, must rely on that existing anchor jurisdiction to attach supplemental authority. They do not possess the same inherent jurisdictional pull. Furthermore, consider timing. A compulsory counterclaim must be raised in the answer. In contrast, a cross-claim under Rule 13g is asserted in the cross-claimant's responsive pleading or, if asserted later, requires leave of court. This difference in timing reflects their distinct roles in litigation strategy. To conclude our analysis of Rule 13, let us consolidate the essential lessons. Remember the stark difference. Rule 13a, the compulsory counterclaim, is mandatory if it arises from the same transaction or occurrence, leading to waiver if omitted. Rule 13g, the cross-claim, remains optional, but both claims hinge critically on that transactional nexus requirement. As you move forward in federal practice, always verify this transactional link when analyzing claims between existing parties. Finally, recognize that these rules do not operate in a vacuum. They interact with broader joinder concepts, such as Rule 20 concerning permissive joinder of parties, and Rule 21 regarding the consequences of misjoinder. Keep these core rules in mind as your foundational reference points for resolving claims between parties.